I'm Joyce Woodworth. Welcome to the Spirit of the Heartland. In today's show, we're going to find out the history of Winona State University. 150 years ago, it started as a normal school here in Winona, Minnesota. We're going to find out all about what a normal school is and find out what goes on here today. Winona State University is a public four-year college with an enrollment of approximately 7,500 undergraduate students located in the heart of Winona. It also has students located at the University Center in Rochester, Minnesota. Winona State University has recently received national acclaim as one of America's 100 best college buys. The only college in the state to receive this honor, and at the same time point out to the nation that this school is one of the finest institutions of its kind in the upper Midwest. The accomplishments of this institution go beyond the dreams of its founders, who began the school more than 150 years ago in 1858. That same year Minnesota became a state, it was also the year after Winona was incorporated as a city on the Mississippi River. Education had been an important issue for the settlers of this area. In the Act of 1849, which established Minnesota as a territory, 1/18 of all the land was to be set aside for school purposes. And in Winona itself, the biggest advocate of education was Dr. John D. Ford. He brought with him from the East Coast the concept of the normal school, which is an educational institute for training teachers and establishing teaching standards or norms, hence the name normal school. Dr. Ford took his idea to the legislature, hoping to establish a state-supported school in Winona. They, in turn, enacted an institution going to the first city that came up with $5,000. Almost overnight, Dr. Ford raised $7,000 from the local citizens, and the Winona State Normal School was born, the first teachers' college west of the Mississippi. We're sitting with Professor Peter Henderson here, who is going to help us delve into the history of Winona State University. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Joyce, and thank you so much for inviting me to come and make this conversation with you.
Well, it's my pleasure. Now, I know you've just written a book on the sesquicentennial history of Winona State, so you obviously have a lot of facts in your head about the university. But let's start way back at the beginning when Winona State was a normal school.
When the normal school opened in 1860, you didn't have to have a high school degree to gain admission to the normal school. In fact, for about 20 or 30 years, it was pretty traditional for and these are mostly women, of course, to come to Winona with an 8th grade education, to receive their normal school training, which would either be 1 or 2 years, and then get their high school diploma, and then go and teach. When Winona State was founded in 1858, students paid no tuition. Instead, they took a pledge that they would teach for 2 years. And so it was this exchange of a free education for service to the state.
The doors of the first Winona Normal School opened to 20 students and Principal John Ogden in 1860. Its purpose was to certify qualified teachers to teach elementary students, primarily in the one-room schoolhouses scattered throughout the countryside, the 3 R's and the capability of becoming good citizens. John Ogden, an experienced normal school advocate from Ohio, set the tone for this school, that is, to encourage the development of the whole character of the individual, physically, educationally, morally, and spiritually. This is the undertone still found in today's mission statement for Winona State University, which states, "The mission is to educate and enlighten our citizenry at a distinctive institution, a community of learners dedicated to improving the world." Principal Ogden only stayed with the school until December of 1861, when he joined the Civil War effort. The school closed until the fall of 1864. The second principal was an innovative man of high moral standards, Principal William Phelps stressed inspiring teachers to promote the public good. During his 12-year tenure, he developed the Model School for pupils ages 6 to 12, for which Winona and other normal schools would become famous. The little school on the corner of 4th and Lafayette Streets was bulging at the seams in those first years after the Civil War. Consequently, Principal Phelps started the ball rolling for a new building which was opened for students on September 1st, 1869. Old Main, as it was called, built where the present Sampson Building now stands, was a state-of-the-art teaching facility, including a model school for elementary students, 100 of which were orphans of soldiers killed in the Civil War. At the time Old Main opened, there were 8 faculty members, 185 students enrolled in the teacher training program or normal school, and 271 students enrolled in the model school. The building was beautiful on the outside with its neo-Gothic features and light and airy on the inside. Along with regular classrooms, it contained a music room, a library, and a museum of natural specimens from the region collected by John Holsinger. Professor Holsinger, teacher of botany and zoology, studied museum methods at prestigious museums of the East, such as the Smithsonian. His collection included over 220 bird species and the Chicago World's Fair of 1893's collection of 3,000 mounted plants. Holsinger led numerous field trips near his cottage in the Bluffs. Today, the Holsinger Lodge, once used by the college, is named after this science professor. The school ran smoothly until 1876, when it hit a bit of a bump, when the state legislature failed to appropriate funds to run the school. Principal Phelps resigned in protest, and Charles Morey, a Winona Normal School graduate, stepped in as a third principal of the normal school. He raised tuition prices to solve the problem, and the Winona community itself stepped in once again with generous support to pay the tuition of those who couldn't afford it. A year later, the state legislature sheepishly restored funding on a permanent basis so that a crisis year like 1876 would never again threaten the school's existence. Young Principal Morey also improved the academic standards of the school by including a 4-year diploma for those who wanted to teach on the high school level. Morey was given a scholarship by Winona Normal to attend MIT on condition he return as a faculty member. He apprenticed under Alexander Graham Bell and became a proponent of America's growing technology interest. Consequently, as principal of Winona Normal, he set up the college's first science laboratories. Principal Morey was followed by the first named president of the college, Irwin Shepard, who had been Winona's superintendent of schools, a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, and a distinguished educator. He firmly believed in the importance of early education, and under his presidency, the first kindergarten west of the Mississippi was established here at Winona's Normal/Model School. During President Shepard's tenure, enrollment increased to 617 students. By 1895, another wing was added to Old Main, providing new classrooms and an expansion of the model school. 3 years later, Old Main grew again when enrollment jumped to 830 students. While enrollment remained low, most students stayed in private homes. However, as more and more young women left the farm and came to Winona for their education, a need arose for better housing. Miss Inglis, a single woman from a well-to-do Winona family, opened a private boarding house near Old Main called the Normal Home. Here, she not only provided a place to live at a modest rate, but she schooled the girls in social graces. Miss Inglis served the women of Winona Normal for nearly 30 years. An actual dormitory to be run by the college was not built until 1910 and was named for Principal Morey. Shepard served as president for 19 years, followed by Jessie Millis-Paul, who took the normal school into the 20th century. Believing the students should be physically as well as mentally fit, he introduced courses in physical education. He also originated the idea of summer school. In 1904, he left Winona Normal to become the first president of UCLA. then known as the California State Normal School at Los Angeles. Guy Maxwell, Winona Normal's next president, served the college longer than any other president. Consequently, in his 35-year tenure, we see the most dramatic changes. Recently awarded a fellowship from Columbia University, Maxwell was the principal of the model school when he was appointed president of the college. Athletics were very important to Maxwell, plus he wanted to find a way to draw more men into the college. Under his presidency, the college's sports teams grew and improved. The men competed intercollegiately, and the women competed intramurally.
Our sports team started off, they've all gone through cycles of greatness and dismay, but they started off playing usually local high schools initially. I remember reading that our first men's basketball team lost their first game to Fountain City High School, something like 78-12. That ignominious beginning, we've moved on to the national championship, which was really a wonderful experience.
In 1909, Maxwell was successful in appropriating funds for a new building next to Old Main, which included a library, a kindergarten, and a gymnasium. This building, known as Ogden Hall, was connected to Old Main by an underground passageway. Above ground, however, an even more unique passageway was built. Perhaps Minnesota's first skyway can be seen in this photo, which connected the main building and Ogden Hall. Curriculum changed during this time, becoming broader and more specialized. In 1915, an actual model school was built where practice teaching in the first 6 grades was carried on. It was known as Phelps School and served as the model school for teachers until 1973. Today it is known as Phelps Hall. In 1918, students could no longer enter the normal school without a high school diploma, and in 1921, the normal school changed its name to Winona State Teachers College. 2 significant events happened the next year. The Teachers College announced its first 4-year curriculum, and in 1926, 4 students graduated with the first bachelor degrees. Early on Sunday morning, December 3, 1922, a townsperson was taking a walk past Old Main when he saw an orange glow in one of the windows. An alarm was called and firefighters rushed to the scene. 2 explosions erupted. Fire shot through the building in uncontrollable force. The beautiful building, which had accommodated over 20,000 students in its 53 years, was destroyed. Ogden Hall, despite being downwind from the fire, was saved and served until it was demolished in 1952. Without missing a beat, the community and the school band together, and classes continued in other buildings in Winona. Enrollment stayed about the same, and a new building was begun. Stephen Sampson, a trustee and the college's resident director, persuaded the legislature to appropriate a sum of $632,000 for the construction of a new building, aptly named Sampson Hall. In stone above the entrance, this college, founded by act of the legislature on August 2, 1858. The original building erected on the site was destroyed by fire on the 3rd of December, 1922. State Teachers College, 1924. The building has been enhanced throughout its 80-plus years, first by Paul and Florence Watkins when they returned from Europe in the 1920s and donated treasures purchased there for the embellishment of the building's exterior. Hidden here and there in the corners, for example, are interesting and playful gargoyles. The colorful ivy against the brick has also enhanced the building, along with the landscaping, pathways, and colorful flowers. Maxwell managed to keep the college running with barely a dip in enrollment throughout the Depression era, and because of his popularity with the local citizens, the college received gifts of land in 1936 to create Maxwell Field. And in 1938, the college received over $50,000 in donated gifts to build Maxwell Library. Maxwell was also a proponent of women's sports, and in 1915, the Women's Athletic Association was formed. After all, over 90% of the students were female until the late 20s.
Maxwell had, as I said, he was interested in athletics. He was a coach. His vision for Winona State was to make it the best PE teachers college in the country. His little saying was, "A woman for every sport, a sport for every woman." So he really did believe that women should engage in physical activities.
In 1920, another dormitory was built for the women, Shepherd Hall, which was built on the same block as Morey Hall, and also the house, which was converted to a dormitory for the small population of men. The campus remained this size throughout the next decade, and the presidencies of Making Mayhus and Arthur French, who both served very short terms. In 1944, Nels Manet became president and served until 1967. Manet took over during World War II, when there were less than 200 students. This number increased rapidly after the war, when the colleges suddenly had more students and applications than it ever had in its history. To accommodate the growth in enrollment, we saw growth also in college degrees and a growth in buildings. Private homes were torn down or moved as the college acquired the land surrounding the campus. The square practical buildings of the 50s and 60s were put up. Memorial Hall took over the place of Ogden Hall, and 6 new buildings were built in the 1950s. This building growth continued into the 1960s, picking up speed as it went along. 8 more buildings or additions were added. In the 1950s, Sampson Hall set aside a room for students to congregate whenever they needed a break. It was named the Smog because of the clouds of smoke which hung in the air during those cigarette-smoking times. In 1965, Manet was successful in getting the legislature to contribute to the building of a student union. This building, called Crisco Commons, has had several renovations over the years and is used for the congregation and pleasure of the students. Well, now, when did the school actually switch from being exclusively a teacher's college to a multi-degree college?
So I would say this was in the 50s when its name designation is to Winona State College. There'd always been art and music and psychology and English and sciences of various sorts, chemistry and biology. Over time, the number of such courses expands dramatically. So it's in the 50s that people begin to, in large numbers, enroll in these liberal arts and science majors.
Dr. Manet can be credited, along with the citizens of Winona, for the expansion of the campus in the center of the city to keep up with the growth of the student population and the move into the liberal arts degrees. The traditionally conservative campus of the first half of the century felt a social change coming in the 60s. The beanies required for the freshmen came off, and the controlled hours in the dormitories disappeared. Dr. Manet retired on January 1st, 1967. The college was over 100 years old, serving over 2,000 students, primarily male at that point. Dr. Robert Dufresne became president for the next 10 years, when the student enrollment doubled in size and the college became known as Winona State University.
Another president who made a real contribution to the university was President Dufresne, who came here at a very difficult time for all institutions nationally in the middle 60s and early 70s. This, of course, is the era of Vietnam. And this campus had its share of free speech, it had its share of marches, but it never became violent. And I think one of the reasons for that was President Dufresne's ability to work with people.
By the end of Dr. Dufresne's presidency, the era of student activism had ended and students returned to more traditional pursuits. The Performing Arts Building was built, in which Vivian Fusillo began the Theater of the Mind and the Children's Show, which has continued for over 40 years. Also built was Monet Hall, with an unusual design of movable walls, which actually never worked because they were cumbersome to move and not very soundproof. During the 70s, Title IX also came into existence, which mandated equal funding for women's sports.
And they did a pretty good job. There was some controversy over this. This was the era when you probably remember the wrestling team was phased out to balance the relationship between men's and women's intercollegiate sports. Gymnastics was very important in the early 1980s, and Coach Jouer took them to national championships for 3 or 4 years consecutively. So sports have been another wonderful outlet for students.
Touchdown Warriors!
Robert Hansen became the 11th president of the university, serving from 1977 until 1983, when Dr. Thomas Stark stepped in like a breath of fresh air as the 12th president of the university. He enhanced positive relations between administration, faculty, and students alike, not to mention a positive influence with the community, which is evident in the most renowned accomplishment of the 1980s. Tom Stark initiated the building of Stark Hall and the Miller School of Engineering, along with the creation of the one-of-a-kind composite engineering degree. Also created during his tenure was the highly successful master's program in nursing. President Stark's tenure was cut short in 1988 when he died suddenly of a heart attack. The positive role for the university continued with the next president, a deeply principled and ethical leader, Dr. Darrell Krueger, who served for 17 years.
When I came to the university, I found a university that I thought could become the leading institution in the upper Midwest. It had all the ingredients, the beauty, the location, the nature of the faculty and staff. It was in Minnesota that loves education. So I was hoping that we could practice here the principles that would lead to a great education and become a national leader.
During his tenure, the university elevated admission standards. Enrollment doubled in size, and the college experienced a huge increase in new age technology. The university saw the completion of Stark Hall, and a new science building was built. Also acquired was Lord's Hall and Towle Center for a residential school on the old St. Teresa's campus. New housing for the students, called the East Lake Apartments, were put up facing the lake on Franklin Street. A new state-of-the-art library named for Dr. Krueger was added to the campus, and the most eye-appealing enhancement for the campus, consequently the city of Winona, was the closing of the streets intertwined between the college buildings, making it a park-like atmosphere with professional landscaping scattered throughout, offering lawns, pathways, fountains, and colorful flowers for the students as well as all of the community of Winona to enjoy. In 2005, with Dr. Krueger's resignation, Dr. Judith Romali stepped in as the 14th president. Arriving at a momentous time, the university was not only moving in a positive direction, but President Romali was able to partake in the most notable achievement in the athletic career of the university when the basketball team, led by Coach Mike Leaf, won the first ever national championship in NCAA Division II basketball.
Listen to this crowd. And the Warriors have won. They head off to the Elite Eight in Springfield, Massachusetts. The Warriors with the win over Minnesota State Mankato. They repeat as North Central Region champions. The Warriors have now won 55 consecutive games, 33 right here at McCowan Gym.
I asked her how she views the university today and what is in store for the future in this ever-changing global society.
The university today is so much like the university at the very beginning when it was a normal school on the banks of this wonderful Mississippi. And the same kinds of ideas. How do you blend advancing knowledge with preparing people for lives of responsibility and service, with improvements in daily life in all the places where you live and work. That's what our early forebears were thinking about when they set this place up in the first place. Winona State today is as advanced, is as much a model, and is seriously involved with the community as it was 150 years ago.
President Romali's vision for the future is linked to the vision of the university's forefathers with the building of the new Wellness Center.
That wellness complex captures everything that the original normal school captures. It is, first of all, one of the most important things about life today, health and healthy living. It's an integration of services to help our students get off to a healthy start. It's connected to the community for people who are recovering from various health challenges. $3 million or more of the dollars that will go into that project have been raised in this community.
Just like John Ford in 1858 raised $7,000 from the Winona community to begin the Winona Normal School, today the community continues to give to Winona State University to educate students to improve our world. This has been Joyce Woodworth. Thanks for joining me on the Spirit of the Heartland.